Well, this is certainly not what I expected. Today we have some news on both Indiana Jones and Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 2. But essentially we have new rumors regarding the future of both. I'm going to first talk about the Indiana Jones stuff, and then later in the video I'll talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 2 and also share my honest thoughts on each of these and everything that's going on. I kind of don't know how to feel about all this though. Let me know your thoughts as well once we go through the video. And don't forget to subscribe. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. So earlier in the week, there was a rumor that Disney are planning to reboot the Indiana Jones franchise. And this came from the Diz Insider, a news outlet that covers pretty much everything Disney. They said, are there any plans for what's next in the Indiana Jones franchise? Lucasfilm is letting the franchise rest for a bit before they do a full reboot of the franchise. I would expect the studio to announce something next year at the D23 Expo, because even though the last film tanked at the box office, Indiana Jones is still an iconic IP and Disney Lucasfilm do not want to waste that. And it does seem that with a franchise like Indiana Jones, it's only a matter of time before it gets a reboot. But considering the disappointment and basically the box office failure of The Dial of Destiny, which released in 2023, I don't think we're going to see a new Indiana Jones for quite a while. But obviously also the idea of rebooting Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford is kind of controversial in its own sense, because he is Indiana Jones. He's what makes the character. Lucasfilm, of course, though, have always been known to recast characters. For example, Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequels is essentially a recast. Ewan McGregor playing him in the prequels is a recast of Alec Guinness. And I think Disney would certainly see a lot of potential in the future of Indiana Jones, even though as history goes, it hasn't brought in as much money as Star Wars or Marvel. Indiana Jones, as big as it is one of their smaller franchises, I want to say, or just smaller when compared to giants like Star Wars and Marvel. And considering the last film wasn't a success, does make it seem like they're going to wait quite a bit longer before relaunching the franchise. That said, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle came out at the end of last year, and this is Harrison Ford's version of Indiana Jones. And the game was a great success, with people praising the way it captures the magic of the original 3 Indiana Jones films. People also praising Troy Baker's performance as Indiana Jones, as essentially Harrison Ford, and with player counts for the game initially being quite high for a single-player title. But then in the last couple of days, this rumor might have been crushed, with industry insider Jeff Schneider saying, I don't know if it'll make you happy or break your heart, but no, there isn't an Indiana Jones reboot in the works at Lucasfilm. So anyone holding their breath for an announcement at D23 next year may want to exhale, as it isn't happening. It does seem like there is a lot going on at Lucasfilm right now, and they're in a bit of a transitory period. It does seem like they're going to be heavily focused on Star Wars from next year onwards, with Star Wars returning to theaters with Mandalorian Grogu, with the Ryan Gosling film, and with seemingly many more to come. Kathleen Kennedy is also reportedly set to be stepping down as Lucasfilm's president, so this could mean a new direction for the future of many Disney projects. And Indiana Jones seems like one of those things they might want to leave on the shelf for maybe just another few years, to recreate some buzz and hype around a reboot when they eventually do that down the track. I have no doubt they will eventually do it. There's also been rumors speculating as to who would play Indiana Jones if it's not Harrison Ford. Pedro Pascal's name has been thrown in there, of course. I feel like this guy gets attached to everything. How do we guarantee people will go and see the movie? Oh, just put Pedro Pascal in it.
Songs today. Oh my god.
Probably getting too old to play Indiana Jones though, especially if they don't start filming this thing for another 3 or 4 years, if they ever do with him. Other candidates I've seen mentioned are Chris Evans, who I think could be really good, but I certainly don't think necessarily has the same aura as Harrison Ford. I mean, who does though? No disrespect to Chris Evans, but I'm not necessarily sure I can picture this. And then the third name that keeps getting thrown around is Glenn Powell. And I feel like he potentially has the range and cheekiness to get away with playing Indiana Jones. And he's also only 36. For reference, Harrison Ford was 38 when he filmed Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm sure that somewhere down the track they are definitely going to reboot Indiana Jones. It just seems like the Disney thing to do. And perhaps they'll turn it into kind of that James Bond kind of thing where we get a new actor for the franchise every few years. It also seems like there are so many stories to tell through the lens of Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark essentially set the archetype for the perfect adventure film. Like Star Wars, it's an industry-defining film that set the precedent for so many more films which have followed afterwards. And those original 3 films in particular do just feel like they have a magic about them. So when we do inevitably get a reboot of Indiana Jones, I just hope it's worth the wait, and I hope they live up to the magic of the originals. I'm not sure if sequels and reboots ever necessarily do, but then perhaps the James Bond reference is a good thing to bring up again. The reboot of James Bond in 2006 with Casino Royale and Daniel Craig certainly revitalized that franchise, brought it into the new era, new decade, and left behind a lot of the cheesiness and gimmickiness of the past. So I think if done the right way, it could certainly be a success. But honestly, it's interesting thinking about why the most recent Indiana Jones failed as well. And part of this, I think people attribute to the fact that Harrison Ford is just too old. People don't necessarily want to see an old Indiana Jones. I think it's hard to accept as an audience that the character you grew up watching and loving is now old. It's perhaps confronting to witness the reality of that. And even though there's nothing necessarily wrong with the adventure we were given in the Dial of Destiny, as I feel in moments it did certainly capture the same spirit as the originals, perhaps seeing an 80-year-old run around in the shadow of his youth isn't something audiences are willing to accept. One of many reasons why this film might have failed. But let's talk now about the Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 2 news. A few weeks ago, you might have seen the rumor from industry leaker Daniel RPK that a Season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi is in the early stages of development. Well, now also according to Jeff Schneider, who I mentioned before, Disney aren't working on Season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He said, "I know that Ewan McGregor was hopeful that he'd get don Obi-Wan's robes once more, but insiders say that despite rumors, there are no plans for a second season of the show. When it comes to A Galaxy Far, Far Away, Lucasfilm currently has bigger fish to fry. There's always a bigger fish, as a wise Jedi once said."
There's always a bigger fish.
But honestly, all of this is just to be taken with a grain of salt. Of the Disney shows that have released in the past few years, I think The Book of Boba needs a Season 2 more so potentially than Obi-Wan Kenobi, especially considering a lot of fans weren't necessarily happy about the way, Boba Fett was depicted. The direction they decided to take his character in and the direction of the series as a whole. I think a lot of us thought we'd be getting badass bounty hunter kind of vibes, and instead we got whatever this was. But I certainly wouldn't be opposed also to an Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 2. It's just whether or not there is a story there to tell. That's my big concern. Because it does indeed feel like in Season 1 that they tried to bridge the gap between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and what Obi-Wan was doing in between, just chilling in the desert, waiting for Luke to grow up. And then the Inquisitors came, the whole thing with Leia happened, and he also faced Vader, not once, but twice in that time. So I don't think they can do the whole, hey, he goes and fights Darth Vader again. That would be quite absurd. I think if they did a Season 2, it would definitely need to involve Qui-Gon and Liam Neeson in some way, have him as a Force ghost, just imparting more wisdom onto Obi-Wan and telling him about all the bigger fish. The term in development is a very loose term. This could mean anything from they're considering the idea, they're in the scripting phase, they're hiring actors, to they're on set and actually filming the thing. So I don't think they're anywhere near that. I'd say Lucasfilm are certainly considering making Season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And from what we've heard, Ewan McGregor would certainly be on board with this. But it does seem like this is way down the track again. If they release Season 2 of Obi-Wan, it's likely not going to be until I'd say like 2028, maybe at the earliest. But again, I feel like it all comes down to whether there's another story to tell here. That said though, there was also a rumor a little while ago that Ewan McGregor was going to be appearing as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Ahsoka Season 2. It is confirmed that there are going to be more flashback sequences in Season 2 of Ahsoka, as it's confirmed that Ariana Greenblatt is returning to play young Ahsoka. So could she potentially have some scenes with a prequel era Obi-Wan Kenobi? I think it's also not so much of a stretch, as Mary Elizabeth Winstead is Ewan McGregor's wife, and she plays Harrison Dula in Ahsoka. So perhaps they'd even potentially be given a scene together. And Ewan McGregor, I assume, would be hearing things about Season 2 through his wife, so maybe he is involved in some way. This is all just speculation. But if they're doing more flashbacks and we also have Hayden Christensen returning to Ahsoka Season 2, perhaps we'll also get a scene with Obi-Wan and Anakin. Wouldn't that be kind of crazy? Like I said though, is Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 2 something we actually need? Does it matter? Perhaps it's just something we want. I'd definitely be watching, I'd definitely be happy, and I still feel like a Season 2, hopefully if done well, could also make up for some of the errors of Season 1, as there's certain moments I certainly did not enjoy watching.
The Force is so strong with you.
Yeah, I know.
Honestly, the production value on the show I think could have been much higher also. And I know it's a COVID show, but a lot of it was filmed on the volume, the indoor LED screens that project Unreal Engine. And at times I feel the show just looked a little shallow and cheap, especially when compared to an on-location show like Andor, which just looks stunning in every frame. So I think there's certainly a lot of room to grow there if they decide to eventually make a Season 2. So what do you think, guys? Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 2 and Indiana Jones Reboot? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. For more, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Discord, and TikTok. Watch this video for more Star Wars, and thanks for watching this. Always remember,
Stay bombastic.